know that saying about how your past always catches up with you? Yeah. Turns out it's not just some old person's warning to scare you straight. It's real. 10 years of marriage down the drain because of stuff I did before I even met my husband. I'm Gabriella Gabby. To those who know me, I'm 32, and my life just imploded. Not because I cheated, not because I spent all our money. No, my life ended because Raphael found out I've slept with over 50 different men. Raphael. Raph, the gentle librarian, who taught me what stability felt like. I miss even saying his name. Raphael and I met right after I finished my art consultancy certification, when I was 22. I was working a temporary gig at a gallery in Lyon. He was in a small, provincial library just across the cobbled street. I was all sharp angles, dark lipstick, and calculated chaos. He was all soft edges, kind smiles, and worn tweed jackets. We'd bump into each other getting café au lait, I swear. His hand would tremble just a little when he reached for the sugar. Eventually, he got the courage to ask me out. What made him different, utterly captivating, was how untouched he was by everything, especially the messy, transactional side of life I had been swimming in. When we met, Raphael was, literally, a virgin. Meanwhile, I'd been around the block, the entire neighborhood, and the next 2 towns over. Between 50 and 60 different guys, if I'm being honest. Which, apparently, is the one thing I should have been from the start. I never told him my number. It just seemed so vulgar, unnecessary. What good would come from him knowing that I'd been with multiple people at once? Or that I'd hooked up with men twice my age in cramped, slightly grimy bathroom stalls at terrible art opening after parties? Or that one time, God help me, with my ex's gross uncle just because he promised me a studio contact? I was such a mess back then. Truly, a catastrophe wrapped in expensive vintage fabric. But that wasn't who I was anymore. The second I saw Raphael, something clicked. A panic button, maybe. A sudden, cold realization that I needed to stop running and start building. I knew I wanted something real, grounded, and safe for once. When we started getting serious, he did ask about my past relationships. Of course, he did. He was so sweetly naive. I kept it vague. A few boyfriends, Raph. Nothing special. You know, university stuff. It wasn't technically a lie. The boyfriends weren't special, and I simply omitted the random hookups, the nameless faces, the transactional exchanges. That wasn't dating. That was survival. Or maybe just pure recklessness. Besides, he seemed so happy. So genuinely, blindingly happy, thinking we were on a somewhat similar level of experience. His beautiful, earnest face would light up, convinced our connection was this rare, magical, cinematic thing. An equal pairing of 2 souls, finally finding safe harbor in each other. Why ruin that? Why poison the perfect fantasy he was weaving, which was also the only perfect life I had ever known? We were married after 2 years. We bought our starter apartment, a cozy little space overlooking the Seine. We adopted a retired greyhound named Gree. Everything was perfect. I became this whole new person, reliable, faithful, the kind of wife his devout, traditional mother immediately approved of. I stopped wearing the harsh black liner and started favoring soft French neutrals. I learned to bake his grandmother's brioche recipe. I cultivated relationships with all the other wives in our building, a collection of perfectly pleasant but utterly boring women obsessed with school schedules and artisanal jam swaps. But I played the part. I played it flawlessly. Nobody, not a soul, would ever guess what I used to be like. The girl who knew exactly how to use the available light in a dimly lit bar, who could walk into any room and find the most powerful man there, and who often woke up next to a stranger whose name she couldn't recall. That Gaby was dead. I had killed her. I never cheated on Raphael. Never. Not even when Jean-Luc from the gallery practically threw himself at me during a work conference in Cannes. Not when my toxic ex, Christophe, messaged me on social media, saying he was in town and feeling nostalgic. That has to be worth something, right? The choice. I chose Raphael. Every single day. For 10 glorious, peaceful, utterly faithful years. But apparently, that doesn't matter if you have a past. Not when your entire foundation is built on an omission. All it took was one stupid game night with my old university friends. Raphael had met a few of them before, but never my core group. The ones who had witnessed the full, spectacular train wreck of my early 20s. Sophia, who never could keep a secret. Antoine, who had bailed me out of trouble too many times to count. Marie, the only one who had genuinely tried to talk some sense into me. I should have known better than to mix those worlds. Oil and water, purity and poison. We were drinking too much rosé, laughing too loudly, playing Never Have I Ever like we were still 21 and had nothing to lose. Antoine, who always had a dramatic flair, leaned forward. Never have I ever slept with more than 10 people. I didn't think. It was automatic, muscle memory. I put my finger down, along with Sophia. Raphael, sitting next to me, looked at me like I had suddenly grown a second, grotesque head. His smile faltered. His eyes went wide, flat, and cold. Then more questions came. It was a deluge. A targeted attack, though my friends didn't know it. Never have I ever had a threesome. Down went my finger. Never have I ever hooked up with someone significantly older, like double your age. Down again. Never have I ever used sex to gain professional advantage. Down. God, I hated that one. With each confession, each lowered finger, I watched my husband's face completely transform. The light left his eyes. The easy warmth in his cheeks drained away. He looked pale, almost green. Sophia, bless her clumsy, oblivious heart, saw his reaction. She saw the absolute terror in my eyes. She grabbed Raphael's arm and pulled him aside. They headed into our tiny kitchen, the door swinging shut behind them, but not before I saw her animated gestures. I could practically hear her voice, ringing with false concern. Oh, Raph, it's just Gabby being Gabby back then. You know, the professor, the married guy with the 3 children. I sat there, frozen, knowing my marriage, my safe, perfect, real life was about to change forever. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. It was the chill of the past reaching out and pulling me back under the surface. Raphael's whole thing, I realized too late, was finding someone pure like him. Not necessarily a virgin, he was too gentle to demand that, but someone who saw intimacy the same sacred, meaningful way he did. Not just something you did with random strangers, against the wall of a nightclub bathroom, because you were bored or lonely or needed validation. If only Sophia would shut up for once in her life. That was my dominant thought. Not, how could I have done this to him? It was self-preservation, pure and simple. When they came back out, Raphael wouldn't even look at me. Not a glance. He was staring at the floor, at the Persian rug we bought on our honeymoon. He was looking anywhere but at the liar who had shared his bed for a decade. We left immediately. I mumbled some excuse about a headache, which wasn't even a lie. My head felt like it was splitting open. The car ride home was so silent, so profoundly empty. I could hear my heartbeat thrumming in my ears like a frantic drum solo. Part of me, the old, entitled, selfish Gabby, wanted to scream that this wasn't fair. Why should what happened before him even matter? Why should the past outweigh the present? But another part, a small, quiet, brutally honest voice, knew I'd messed up. I messed up not by being promiscuous, but by hiding it for so long. By allowing him to build his entire identity as my husband on a clean slate that was, in reality, covered in messy, crude graffiti. But mostly, I was terrified. Terrified of losing the life we'd built, the warm, comforting, good thing I'd ever had, the only good thing I had ever truly earned. When we got home, all he said was 2 sentences, his voice completely flat, devoid of all feeling. Were you ever going to tell me? I started crying. Deep, heaving sobs. I explained that I was afraid of losing him, that I was a different person now, that the past shouldn't matter because he was the one who saved me. I spun a narrative where I was the desperate victim of my own history, and he was the noble hero. He just stood there. He didn't move toward me. He didn't move away. He just stood there, staring, like he was looking at a particularly uninteresting piece of modern sculpture he had accidentally purchased. Then he grabbed a heavy woolen blanket from the closet. He went to sleep on the small sofa in his study. I still can't stop replaying that night in my head, the way everything unraveled so fast. It makes me physically sick. Through the doorway of the study, I could see Raphael sitting on the edge of the sofa, staring at his hands, while Sophia's drunken, well-meaning voice kept echoing in my memory. What was she telling him about? Was it the art professor I slept with for a better grade? The time I hooked up with a married father of 3 at a gallery opening, just for the thrill of the danger? All those one-night stands where I didn't even remember their names the next morning? My past wasn't just my past. It was ammunition. And Sophia had handed Raphael the gun. The next few weeks were a nightmare of slow, agonizing erosion. Raphael went through this cruel, repeating cycle. Ice-cold silence that lasted for days, where we shared the same small space but existed on different planets. Then, sudden, blinding bursts of questions, accusations, really that I didn't want to answer. Then, back to the silence. Was I just some project for you? He asked one night, his voice laced with venom I never knew he possessed. The nice guy, the clean slate you settled for after you had your fun? I tried explaining that he was different, special, unique. But the more I talked about my past, the more details I was forced to reveal, the more distant he became. The more I tried to make him understand the Gabi before Raphael, the more I pushed Raphael away. Did you ever even love me, Gabriella? He asked one night, his voice finally breaking. Or was I just convenient? The easiest path to a life you could show your mother? That one hurt. That one landed squarely where it was intended. Of course, I loved him. I still love him. I had to. He was the anchor. But how do you prove love to someone who now questions every single memory you've shared? Every shared joke? Every whispered intimacy? Every promise made? 3 weeks after the infamous game night, I thought stupidly, pathetically, that things were improving slightly. Raphael started talking to me about everyday stuff again. Bills, his work at the library, what we should have for dinner. It wasn't warm or loving. It wasn't the spontaneous affection I was used to, but it was something. It was interaction. It was the scaffolding of our old life. Then I realized what had really changed. He'd stopped caring. There was this emptiness in his eyes when he looked at me now. Like I was just someone he lived with, a necessary roommate, not the woman he once couldn't keep his gentle hands off. It was the most terrifying indifference I had ever witnessed. It was worse than anger. Our bedroom became this cold, uncomfortable tomb. Raphael started going to bed hours after I was asleep, and getting up before I woke. We were performing the choreography of marriage without any of the heart. If I tried to touch him, to roll over and rest my head on his chest, he'd stiffen instantly, like I was a complete stranger who had mistakenly climbed into his bed. When we did have sex, which became rare, maybe once every 2 weeks, it was horrifyingly different. It was mechanical, perfunctory, like he was just going through the motions to fulfill some biological requirement. He stopped looking at me, stopped making sure I was enjoying it. It was about his release. That was it. Afterward, he would turn away immediately, folding his body into a tight, miserable ball, instead of holding me and whispering sweet nonsense like he used to. One night, after another utterly sterile session where he barely looked at my face, I finally broke. I sat up in the darkness, the sheet draped low. "What is happening with us?" I demanded, the words rattling in the suffocating silence. "You won't even cuddle me anymore. You won't even look at me." He stared at the ceiling for so long, 10, 20, maybe 30 seconds, I thought he wouldn't answer at all. Then he spoke. His voice was low, careful, and precise. "I used to think what we had was special, Gabby. That the way you responded to me, the way we connected, was something unique. Rare." He paused, his gaze still fixed on the ceiling. "Now, I know you've done all this with dozens of other guys. Some of them complete strangers. How am I supposed to feel? That this was different?" "It was different," I insisted, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "It was just physical then. With you, it means something. With you, it's love. Does it?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of all inflection. "Or am I just the guy you settled for when you decided to clean up your image? The safe choice? The one you chose to avoid the consequences of your past?" I started noticing other changes, too. Subtle shifts that, in isolation, meant nothing. Together, they added up to a terrifying narrative. Raphael began working late, or so he claimed. He was suddenly spending weekends helping his friend Victor with a project that never seemed to end. He started dressing better, sharper. And then, the ultimate betrayal of our transparency. He installed a password on his phone, a complex one. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now he was the one with secrets. Now he was the one building walls. I wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, to tell him that his behavior was insulting and hypocritical. But what right did I have? I'd hidden the truth for 10 years. I felt the ground shift from under me. I had built my marriage on a lie of omission. Now, my husband was building his new, secret life on a lie of commission, and I couldn't say a word. I launched Operation Win Raphael Back. Pathetic, I know, but I was desperate. I was losing my anchor, my safety net, my entire identity. I started with the obvious seduction. I bought new, expensive lingerie, the kind that was more art than fabric. I planned a fancy dinner, his favorite rich, complicated beef stew. I put on his favorite playlist, the melancholy French jazz he loved. He came home to the glow of 3 dozen candles, the comforting aroma of the stew, a nice bottle of Bordeaux, and me wearing practically nothing beneath a silk robe. For a brief, split second, I saw a flicker of the old desire flash in his eyes, raw, hungry, protective. Then, he shut it down. The shutter came down fast and hard, and the window was once again opaque. "What's all this, Gabby?" he asked. His voice was carefully neutral, frustratingly polite. "I thought we could have a special night," I said, trying to sound confident, alluring, while inside I was dying 1,000 humiliating deaths. Just us. He looked around at my efforts, the pristine table setting, the flickering candles, the expensive wine, then back at me, his face unreadable. "Special," he repeated. The word tasted bitter on his tongue. Like just us and the ghosts of 50+ other men. I felt like he'd slapped me across the face. The shock made my eyes sting. "That's not fair, Raphael," I whispered, the volume leaving my voice entirely. "That's not fair at all." "Isn't it?" he challenged, his voice rising a notch. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, ignoring the Bordeaux I'd carefully decanted and cracked it open. The sound was deafening in the charged atmosphere. "You know what's really unfair? I can't even look at you without wondering if every move, every sound you make, every sigh, every small intimacy, is something you perfected with someone else first. If anything about us was ever really ours." He slept in the guest room that night. I sobbed into my silk pillow, humiliated, heartbroken, and utterly defeated. But I didn't give up. I tried a new approach, acting like everything was normal. I chattered about work. I asked about his day. I made his favorite meals, all while studiously ignoring the massive, festering wound that had swallowed our home whole. That strategy lasted about a week before Raphael called me out. "What are you doing, Gaby?" he asked one night, his voice filled with exasperation. "Why are you acting like nothing happened? Are we just going to pretend this entire conversation never took place?" "Nothing was working," I snapped back, suddenly defensive. "Exactly," he said, and walked away. The Arctic tundra of our home grew colder. I was running out of ideas. Finally, I decided on direct confrontation. "We need to talk about this," I said one evening, blocking his way to the study. "Really talk. Because I can't live like this anymore. I cannot exist in this silence." We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, made plans for our future, and played terrible board games on rainy Sundays. Now it felt like a negotiation table between two weary, hostile strangers. "I love you," I started, trying to find the genuine sincerity through the panic. "That has never been a lie. Not one moment of it." "Maybe not," he conceded, taking a slow sip of his water. "But how would I know? What else haven't you told me, Gabby? Where does the deception stop?" "Nothing. That's it, my past is my past. It doesn't affect us now." He laughed. It was a humorless, choked sound that chilled me. "Except it does. Every day. It affects how I see you. It affects how I see us. It affects how I see myself. Do you understand what it's like to suddenly realize your entire marriage, your entire adult life, is built on a foundation of half-truths?" 2 weeks later, the subtle shifts became obvious. Raphael started staying out later than just late. His wedding ring occasionally disappeared from his finger on a Friday, only to reappear on Monday morning. He took calls in the hallway closet, his voice dropping to a whisper. The bathroom cabinet suddenly held a new, expensive cologne I hadn't bought him. Something sharp and woody. Small things that added up to something massive, something I desperately did not want to face. I checked his phone while he was in the shower. I know. Hypocritical, right? The woman who kept secrets for 10 years suddenly demanding absolute transparency and violating the last remnants of our privacy. But I was desperate. I was drowning. I needed to know if I was crazy, or if he was replacing me. There were texts from someone named Aurelie. Lots of them. "Enjoyed coffee today. Thanks for listening. You deserve better than this confusion. I appreciate your honesty, Raf." Nothing explicitly romantic. Nothing that proved anything. But intimate. Intimate in a way that made my stomach knot and my breakfast threaten to reappear. She was his confidant. She was the one he was being honest with. When Raphael came out of the shower, drying his hair with a towel, I was sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in my hand. His face hardened instantly. Any remaining vulnerability vanished. Going through my phone now? He asked, his voice cold, heavy with a bitter disappointment that eclipsed even his anger. Who's Aurelie? I shot back, past caring how I looked. I was the angry, jealous wife now. He snatched the phone away, his jaw tight. A friend. Someone I can actually talk to. Talk to about what? I cried out, my voice cracking with anger, fear, and a deep, blinding jealousy. About how terrible your lying wife is? Is that it? Is she the sympathetic ear? Raphael ran a hand through his damp hair, looking utterly exhausted, bone-weary. Yes, Gabby. About how my entire marriage turned out to be built on lies. About how I don't even know who I'm married to anymore. Yes, that is what I talk about. And getting close to another woman, is that your solution? His laugh was bitter. That's rich coming from you. Now you care about boundaries. Now you're worried about loyalty. I never cheated on you, I shouted, jumping to my feet. Never. No matter what I did before. I have been faithful every single day of our marriage. Physically, maybe, he said quietly, lowering his gaze. But you cheated me out of making an informed choice about who I was marrying. You stole 10 years from me, Gaby. 10 years of honesty. The fight escalated from there. All the tension of the past months exploded into the worst, most vicious argument of our marriage. I accused him of using my past as a convenient, noble excuse to cheat with this Aurelie person. He called me a manipulative liar who had trapped him into marrying someone he never would have chosen if he'd known the truth. Are you sleeping with her? I asked, my voice small, barely a whisper. He looked me straight in the eyes. No, but I've thought about it. I've thought about it every single day since I met her, and I hate myself for that. But yes, I've thought about it. I need some space, Raphael continued, suddenly calm, resigned. Real space, not just sleeping in different rooms. I'm going to stay with Victor for a while. You're leaving? Panic rose in my chest. Everyone knew once someone moved out, they rarely, if ever, came back. As he zipped up his duffel bag, reality finally hit me. This was the end. The final, irreversible cut. Please, I begged, grabbing his arm, clinging to him. Please don't leave. We can work this out. I'll do anything. I'll change everything. He gently removed my hand, looking down at me with the saddest expression I've ever seen. That's the problem, Gaby. You'll do anything to keep me, except the one thing that mattered most, being honest from the beginning. I was afraid. I cried, desperate, the tears finally real and hot. Afraid you wouldn't love the real me. He looked at me sadly, pity mixed with a deep, profound regret. I never got the chance to try, did I? Then he was gone. The front door clicked shut behind him. I collapsed onto our bed, my bed now, and sobbed until my throat was raw and my body was shaking uncontrollably. Somewhere, deep in my mind, I always knew this day might come. That eventually, the truth would surface and claim its payment. That's the thing about lies. They're like time bombs, just waiting to explode and destroy everything within a 10-year radius. Raphael was gone for 2 weeks, the longest 2 weeks of my life. I called, I texted, I emailed, mostly silence in return, except for brief, sterile messages about bills or mail that needed forwarding. I tried everything. I sent long, agonizing, emotional emails, explaining my past in excruciating, self-flagellating detail. I explained why I hid it and how much I regretted my choices. I framed myself as a lost soul he had saved, but who was now being cruelly abandoned by her savior. I had flowers delivered to Victor's place, where Raphael was staying. I even drove by a few times, pathetically hoping to catch a glimpse of him, to see him look miserable and regretful. Once, I saw him. He was getting into his little Renault with a woman I immediately knew was Aurelie. She was pretty, not in the sharp, complicated, curated way I was. She was wholesome, natural. Her hair was pulled back, her jeans fit perfectly but casually. She was the exact, simple opposite of my carefully crafted image. They were laughing about something. A real laugh. A shared, easy moment. I hadn't seen Raphael laugh like that in months. Maybe years. I felt a spear of pure, white-hot jealousy pierce my chest. I called Sophia, hoping for some moral support, some righteous indignation on my behalf. But she was surprisingly cold. What did you expect, Gabby? She asked, her voice flat. You built your entire relationship on a lie. I love you, girl. But even I knew this would blow up eventually. After 2 weeks of silence, Raphael finally texted, "We need to talk. I'll come by tomorrow at 7. When I opened the door, the sight of him hit me like a physical blow. He looked different, not just the new, slightly shorter haircut, or the clothes I didn't recognize, but something in his posture, his eyes. He seemed more centered, more certain. While I'd been falling apart, crumbling into dust, Raphael had been finding himself. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice steady, detached. "About us. About what happened. About what I want going forward." I held my breath, too afraid to hope, too afraid not to. "I talked to a therapist," he continued. "She helped me understand some things about why your past hit me so hard, about what it means for us." And? I could barely get the word out. Raphael looked directly at me. His gaze was unflinching. "Hard. I can't do this anymore, Gaby. I want a divorce." The world tilted sideways. Even though I'd been bracing for this exact possibility, hearing the words out loud made me dizzy. "Raphael, please." He held up a hand. "Let me finish. I've thought this through carefully. It's not just about the number of men you've been with. It's about the deception. For 10 years, you let me believe something that wasn't true. You watched me build a life with you based on false information. That's not something I can get past." "People change!" I cried desperately, grasping for any straw. "The person who did those things, who slept with all those men, that's not who I am now. You changed me." "If that were true," he said quietly, with devastating logic, "you would have told me yourself. The fact that it took a drunken game and an old friend to reveal the truth tells me everything I need to know about who you still are." "And Aurélie?" I couldn't help asking, needing to inflict a final wound, needing to make him the villain. "Is she part of this decision?" A flash of raw anger crossed his face. "Don't make this about her. This is about you and me and the fact that I can't trust anything about our relationship anymore." "Are you with her now?" I pressed, self-destructively needing to know the worst. He sighed, running a hand over his forehead. "We've grown close. She understands what I'm going through. But no, we're not together. I wouldn't do that. Not while I'm still married. Unlike some people, I believe in honesty in relationships." The dig hurt. It was designed to. But I deserved it. "So? You'll be with her after the divorce," I said flatly, the realization sinking like a stone. "I don't know what will happen with Aurélie or anyone else," Raphael replied. "I just know I can't stay in this marriage. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'll be fair in the settlement. The apartment, the accounts. We can split everything equitably." I laughed bitterly. "How generous. You get to walk away with your conscience clear, while I'm the villain who ruined everything." His expression hardened. "Is that really how you see this, Gabriella? After lying to me for our entire relationship, you still think you're the victim?" Raphael moved toward the door. "My lawyer will contact yours. I hope we can keep this civil." "That's it?" I asked, my voice breaking again. "You're just walking away?" He paused, his hand on the doorknob, his back to me. "You know what's ironic, Gaby? If you had told me about your past from the beginning, I probably would have still loved you. It would have been hard to hear. It would have taken time, but at least it would have been honest. It would have been real." He finally turned back, his eyes searching mine one last time. "It's the years of deception I can't forgive, Gaby, not the actions themselves." With that final twist of the knife, he was gone again. But this time, I knew he wouldn't be coming back. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Raphael was true to his word about being fair. We split the assets evenly. We sold the apartment, divided the few pieces of furniture we cared about. Every interaction was conducted through lawyers or brief, painfully civil emails. It was like we'd never shared a life at all, like the past decade had been erased with a cold, precise stroke. I moved into a small, sterile apartment across town. I took a transfer at the gallery to avoid running into mutual friends and tried to rebuild. But starting over at 32 is harder than starting fresh at 22. I'd grown used to being Raphael's wife, to the comfortable, unquestioned stability we'd built. Now I was just Gaby, the real Gaby, with no more masks to hide behind. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I saw them together at the local market, Raphael and Aurélie, shopping for dinner ingredients, moving together with the easy, natural familiarity of a couple who truly fit. They didn't notice me watching from behind a display of fresh herbs. He looked happy, genuinely, radiantly happy. Not the forced contentment he'd maintained during our last years together. He was laughing at something she said, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. It was a gesture of ownership, of comfort, of trust. It was like watching a knife twist slowly in my heart. I abandoned my half-filled basket of vegetables and fled to my car, where I broke down completely. Not just because he was with her, but because seeing them together made the magnitude of what I'd lost painfully, unequivocally clear. Raphael had moved on. He'd found someone he could trust. Someone who gave him what I never could. Honesty from the beginning. The worst part came 3 months later when I ran into Sophia at a coffee shop near my new workplace. I'd been actively avoiding our old friend group, but this encounter was unavoidable. After awkward small talk about our respective jobs, she mentioned Raphael. "Oh, did you hear? Raph and Aurelie are engaged," she said, too brightly. She didn't stop there. "They're perfect together, you know. So authentic. No games, no secrets. It's refreshing. She's exactly what he needed." Every word was a dagger coated in sugar. But the final blow came when she added, casually stirring her latte, "Plus, she's pregnant. They're due in January." I spiraled after that. Completely. Terrifyingly. I started going out too much, drinking too much, looking for trouble. I fell back into old, toxic patterns. I started hooking up with men whose names I barely learned, men who promised nothing and delivered less. I was punishing myself for losing Raphael by becoming the very person he was repulsed by. One night, drunk, miserable, and self-destructive, I texted Raphael. "Congratulations on the baby. Guess you finally found someone worthy of starting a family with. A real foundation." His response came the next morning. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was impossibly kind. "Gabby, please get help. I don't want this for you. We both deserve peace." Even after everything, the lies, the betrayal, the years of deception, he still cared enough to want me to be okay. That simple, undeserved kindness broke something in me that anger, self-pity, and jealousy never could reach. Because he was right. This path I was on would destroy me, and I knew it. That text was my rock bottom. The next day, I called a therapist. I started the painful process of facing who I really was. Not the wild girl from college. Not Raphael's perfect, sanitized wife. But something more complicated. Someone who had made mistakes, who had hurt others, who had lied to protect herself and her desired life. Someone who desperately needed to learn honesty not just with others, but with herself. It's been 1 year since then. I'd like to say I'm completely healed, that I found peace with my choices and their devastating consequences. But that would be another lie, and I am trying very hard not to tell those anymore. The truth is, I still wake up sometimes, reaching across the space where he should be, instinctively seeking his warmth. I still drive by our old apartment occasionally, even though strangers live there now. I still feel the crushing ache of what could have been if I had just been brave enough to be honest from the start. Raphael and Aurelie had their baby, a beautiful little boy named Victor Jr. I saw the announcement online. They look radiantly happy in the photos. A perfect, authentic little family. A life built on trust and honesty. The life I could have had if I'd been a different kind of person. A better, braver person. I'm dating again. Cautiously. Taking it slowly. And now, I'm being upfront. Brutally, terrifyingly upfront about my past from the very beginning. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's terrifying, but it is also profoundly freeing. Some men walk away when they learn about my history. They hear the number 50 plus and they see the ghosts Raphael saw. And that hurts. It truly does. But better to lose them on my terms, with the truth out in the open, than to build another relationship on lies that will eventually implode and take everything with them. I see it now with perfect clarity. It was never about the number of men I'd slept with. That was just the painful symptom. It was about the decade of deception. It was the cracked foundation of lies our marriage was built on. Raphael would have accepted my past if I'd given him the chance. What he absolutely could not accept was discovering that the woman he'd loved, married, and trusted for 10 years had never fully existed. So here I am, starting over, trying to build an authentic life from the rubble. No more masks, no more convenient omissions, no more running from my past. Just me, flawed, complicated, still learning. Facing the consequences of choices made long ago, when I thought my charm and my ambition were enough to outrun the truth. It's not the life I planned. It's not the future I thought I'd have, the quiet, safe domesticity of the librarian's wife. But it's real. And after a lifetime of pretending, of being everyone's Gabby but my own, maybe that's what I needed all along. The pain is the price of admission to reality, and I am finally ready to pay it.